The great hall of the Galactic Council stretched for miles in every direction. Its crystal walls showed the stars beyond, making everyone inside feel like they were floating in space itself. Today, those walls seemed darker than usual. Admiral Han Sol Kim stood in the center of the hall, his hands clasped behind his back. Around him, representatives from 47 different alien species sat in their floating seats, all looking down at him with cold eyes. Han Sol had seen many things in his 50 years of life. He had fought in 3 wars before humanity even knew aliens existed. He had commanded the first human ships to travel between stars. He had shaken hands with creatures that looked like walking trees and others that were just clouds of gas. But he had never felt as alone as he did right now. The Krellian ambassador rose from his seat. The Krellians looked like giant lizards that walked on 2 legs, with scales that changed color when they were angry. Right now, those scales were deep red. "We are here today to decide what to do with the humans," the ambassador said. His voice echoed through the hall like thunder. "They have shown themselves to be too dangerous for civilized space." Han Sol wanted to laugh, but he kept his face blank. Dangerous? Humans had been part of the galactic community for only 30 years. In that time, they had started 3 colonies, built 2 trade stations, and yes, fought 1 small war. But that war had been started by the Vorthon Empire when they attacked a human mining ship. Humans had simply defended themselves. "Let us review the charges," said the council speaker, a being that looked like a floating jellyfish made of light. First, excessive aggression. In the Vorthon conflict, humans did not simply defeat their enemies. They completely destroyed the Vorthon, 4th Fleet, and occupied 7 Vorthon worlds. Han Sol remembered that war well. He had been there. The Vorthons had killed 3,000 human miners in their first attack. They had broadcast videos of the massacre across their empire, laughing about it. When humans finally responded, they made sure such a thing would never happen again. The Vorthons surrendered after 6 months and had been peaceful neighbors ever since. Second, the speaker continued, rapid territorial expansion. In just 30 years, humans have claimed 17 star systems and are actively surveying 40 more. This rate of growth threatens the established order of the galaxy. This time, Han Sol did smile slightly. The established order. For 10,000 years, the major alien species had divided up the galaxy among themselves. They had agreed that certain areas would belong to certain species forever. No one was allowed to expand into new territory without permission from the Council. Humans had not been told about these rules when they first joined the galaxy. They had simply gone out and found empty worlds to live on. Third, dangerous unpredictability in conflict resolution. Humans do not follow accepted patterns of warfare. They use tactics that are considered unsporting. Han Sol thought about this charge. It was true that humans fought differently than aliens. Most alien wars were like games with rules. Fleets would meet in open space and shoot at each other until one side had lost enough ships to surrender. Humans, on the other hand, used tricks. They hid behind asteroids. They pretended to retreat and then attacked when their enemies were not ready. They targeted supply lines instead of fighting head-on battles. In the Vorthon War, human ships had appeared in Vorthon home systems without warning, something no alien species had ever done before. "These charges are serious," the speaker said, "but the Council recognizes that humans are still a young species. You have not yet learned to control your violent nature. Therefore, we offer you a choice." Han Sol straightened. He had been expecting this moment. You may accept voluntary containment to your home system with strict limits on your technology and population. A council fleet will monitor you to ensure compliance. In time, if you prove you have learned wisdom, you may be allowed limited contact with the galaxy again. And if we refuse? Han Sol asked. The Krellian ambassador's scales turned an even deeper red. Then the council will vote on mandatory containment, a permanent quarantine. No human will be allowed to leave the Sol system ever again. Any human found in galactic space will be considered an act of war. Han Sol looked around the hall. He could see it in their eyes. They had already made their decision. This trial was just for show. The aliens were scared of humans, and scared people did. Stupid things. We need time to consider your offer, Han Sol said. You have 1 standard hour, the speaker replied. Han Sol was escorted to a small waiting room where Dr. Yun-hee Park was already sitting. She was Earth's chief expert on alien biology and had been studying galactic species for 20 years. Her face was pale, but her eyes were angry. They're going to vote for quarantine no matter what we say, she told him as soon as the door closed. I've been watching their body language. The decision was made before we even arrived. I know, Han Sol said. He sat down across from her. The question is, what do we do about it? We can't fight the entire galaxy, Yun-hee said. They have thousands of ships. We have maybe 200. We don't need to fight them, Han Sol said quietly. We just need to disappear. Yun-hee stared at him. What do you mean? Han Sol activated his personal communicator using a frequency that the aliens couldn't detect. Phoenix Protocol is now active, he said into the device. Repeat, Phoenix Protocol is now active. Far away on Luna Base, Commander Jamin Lee received the message. He had been waiting for this moment for 5 years, ever since the first signs that the galactic community was turning against humanity. He opened a sealed vault and pulled out a datapad that contained the most secret plans in human history. Project Phoenix had been created by the best minds on Earth. It was based on a simple idea. If the galaxy ever tried to cage humanity, humans would not wait around to be caged. They would leave, but not as refugees. They would leave as conquerors. The hour passed quickly. When Han Sol and Yun-hee returned to the Great Hall, they found the alien representatives looking smug and satisfied. The vote had been held while they were gone. It had been unanimous. The Galactic Council has decided, the speaker announced. Humanity is too dangerous to remain part of galactic civilization. You have 30 standard days to recall all human vessels and personnel from beyond the Sol system. After that time, any human found outside your home system will be destroyed on sight. We understand, Han Sol said calmly. The Krellian ambassador leaned forward. You accept this judgment? We accept that you have made your decision, Han Sol replied. And we will make ours. Something in his tone made several aliens shift uncomfortably in their seats. But it was too late now. The decision had been made. As Han Sol and Yun-hee left the council chambers, she whispered to him. What is Phoenix Protocol? Han Sol smiled for the first time that day. You'll see. But I can tell you this much. The galaxy thinks they're putting humanity in a cage. What they don't realize is that they're about to set us free. Back on Earth, the message was already spreading through secret channels. Every human colony, every mining station, every exploration ship received the same coded transmission. Come home, but not to surrender. Come home to prepare. The aliens thought they had solved their human problem. They went back to their worlds feeling satisfied that the dangerous newcomers had been properly contained. They had no idea that they had just made the biggest mistake in galactic history. In the depths of space, human ships began to move, not toward Earth as the aliens expected, but toward secret locations that had been prepared years ago. Massive construction projects that had been hidden from alien eyes suddenly came to life. Scientists who had been working on theoretical projects began turning their theories into reality. The galaxy had chosen to banish Earth, but humans had been planning for this day for a long time. They had learned to think like their ancestors, who had sailed across Earth's oceans to find new lands. The only difference was that now the ocean was space itself, and the new lands were entire worlds waiting to be claimed. The countdown had begun. In 30 days, the quarantine would begin. But the aliens had no idea what humanity was really planning. They thought they were caging a dangerous animal. Instead, they had just declared war on a species that had been preparing for exactly this moment. The galaxy was about to learn what happened when you tried to cage humanity. The answer was simple. You didn't cage humans. You just made them angry enough to break free and take everything you thought was yours. In 30 days, the real test would begin, and humanity intended to pass it in ways the galaxy could never imagine. 2 years had passed since the Galactic Council's verdict. The alien monitoring stations around the Sol system reported the same thing every day. Humans were staying inside their prison like good prisoners. Ships came and went between Earth, Mars, and the outer colonies, but none tried to cross the invisible barrier that marked the edge of human space. The galaxy had moved on, satisfied that the human problem was solved. They could not have been more wrong. Deep in the asteroid belt, where alien sensors could not reach through the interference of countless spinning rocks, engineer Kyung-Min Cho stood on an observation deck that should not have existed. Around him stretched a construction project so massive that it defied belief. The asteroid Ceres had been completely hollowed out and turned into a shipyard. But this was not just any shipyard. This was where humanity was building its future. Status. Report, Kyung-Min said into his headset. Hull Section 47 is complete, came the reply from one of his teams. We're starting on the engine mount now. Kyung-Min nodded and made notes on his tablet. What his teams were building was not just a ship. It was a world that could travel between stars. The generation ship New Dawn was 12 kilometers long and 4 kilometers wide. Inside its hull were entire cities, farms that could feed 1 million people, factories that could build anything humanity might need, and engines powerful enough to push this massive vessel faster than any alien ship could travel. New Dawn was not alone. All around Ceres, similar ships were taking shape. Some were smaller, designed to carry only a few 100,000 people. Others were even larger, mobile worlds that could house entire nations. Humanity was not just planning to leave the Sol system, they were planning to take their entire civilization with them. The work never stopped. Teams of workers and robots labored around the clock, turning raw asteroids into the building blocks of humanity's future. Every day, more materials arrived from the outer planets, where automated miners had been working for years, gathering resources for this moment. Captain So Young Kang commanded the recall fleet, though the aliens watching would never have called it that. To them, it looked like normal human trade and exploration ships returning home from various parts of the galaxy. What they did not see was what those ships were really carrying. Another load from the Rigel sector. reported her first officer, as a mining ship docked with the hidden station. Full cargo of rare metals and alien technology samples. So Young smiled. For 2 years, every human ship that returned from alien space had brought back more than just people and supplies. They brought intelligence, star charts showing every world the aliens had ever surveyed, technical specifications for alien weapons, and shields. Most importantly, they brought information about worlds that the galaxy kept in reserve, planets that were perfect for human life, but which the aliens had decided to keep empty for future use. The aliens thought they knew all about human capabilities because they had been watching human ships for 30 years. What they did not know was that humans had been watching them right back. Every alien port that human traders had visited, every alien ship that humans had encountered, every piece of alien technology that humans had been allowed to see. All of it had been carefully studied and copied. In a secret laboratory built inside a hollowed-out asteroid, scientist Hyun-Woo Nam worked on humanity's greatest achievement. The aliens had faster-than-light travel, but their ships could only jump a few dozen light years at a time, and they needed special stations to navigate accurately. Human ships had been limited to the same technology because that was all the aliens would share, but humans had not been content to use alien technology forever. They had been studying it, improving it, and creating something entirely new. Hyun-Woo's team had built a drive system that could jump hundreds of light years in a single leap, with no need for navigation stations. More importantly, these drives could not be tracked by any alien technology. Test number 47 is ready, his assistant told him. Begin the jump, Hyun-Woo said. The small test ship disappeared from the asteroid belt and reappeared in the Kuiper belt, 3 billion kilometers away in less than a second. The aliens monitoring human space detected nothing unusual. Their sensors could not track the new human drive signatures. Perfect, Hyun-Woo whispered. Ready the full-scale tests. On Earth itself, Director In-Ah Song coordinated the greatest migration in human history. But this was not a desperate refugee flight. This was a carefully planned relocation of everything that made human civilization great. Entire cities were being disassembled and loaded onto transport ships, not destroyed. Carefully taken apart so they could be rebuilt on new worlds. Libraries containing all of human knowledge were copied and distributed across hundreds of ships. Art galleries, museums, even famous landmarks were being preserved and prepared for transport. The Shanghai modules are ready for loading, reported one of her coordinators. Good. How are we doing on the agricultural sections? 70% complete. We'll have enough food production capacity to feed 12 million people for 20 years while the new colonies get established. In-Ah looked at her master schedule. Everything was proceeding perfectly. The aliens thought that quarantine meant humans were trapped and slowly dying. Instead, humans were using the time to prepare for the greatest expansion in their history. But the most important work was happening in the deep space stations that orbited beyond Pluto. Here, Admiral Dong-Hyun Ryu was assembling not just a fleet, but an armada that would make the alien quarantine forces look like toys. The aliens knew that humans had about 200 ships capable of interstellar travel. What they did not know was that humans had been building ships in secret for the past 5 years. Ships that used stealth technology reverse-engineered from captured alien equipment. Ships with weapons that could punch through any alien shield. Ships that could travel farther and faster than anything in the galactic fleet. Status of the escort squadrons? Dong-Hyun asked his staff. All ready, sir. We have 600 combat vessels prepared for the Exodus. The aliens think we have 200 ships total. They have no idea what's coming. The Admiral nodded. The alien blockade fleet was impressive by galactic standards. 300 ships from a dozen different species, all working together to keep humanity contained. But those ships were designed to fight other aliens who followed the same rules and used the same tactics. They were not prepared for human warfare. Navigation Officer Yun-Ji Bai worked at a massive star chart that covered an entire wall. Red dots marked every known alien world. Blue dots showed worlds that humans had already surveyed in secret. Green dots indicated worlds that were perfect for human colonization, but which the aliens had never bothered to claim. The three main fleets will go to different galactic arms, she explained to the assembled officers. Fleet Alpha will head toward the Outer Rim, where there are thousands of uninhabited worlds. Fleet Beta will go to the Sagittarius Arm, where we can establish contact with the independent species that the Council ignores. Fleet Gamma will head to the far side of the galaxy, beyond the reach of any alien pursuit. Each fleet would be large enough to establish its own civilization. Each would carry millions of people, complete industrial capability, and enough firepower to defend itself against any alien attack. But more importantly, each fleet would carry the knowledge and determination to spread human influence across the galaxy. The aliens monitoring the Sol system continued to see exactly what they expected to see. Human ships moving between the inner planets. Construction activity around Earth and Mars. Normal traffic for a species adjusting to permanent containment. Their sensors could not penetrate the asteroid belt where the real work was happening. Their intelligence networks had no idea that every human in the galaxy was quietly preparing for the same moment. In the Centauri colonies, the last human settlers were packing their belongings and preparing to return to Earth. Or so it appeared to the alien observers. In reality, they were loading everything valuable onto ships that would rendezvous with the Exodus fleet at a secret location beyond alien sensor range. Captain Min-Ho Yang commanded the military escort squadron that would protect the civilian ships during their journey. His ships carried weapons that the aliens had never seen before. Energy beams that could slice through the strongest alien hulls, missiles that could track their targets across light years, and defensive systems that could turn any attack back on the attacker. "Are your crews ready?" Dong-hyun asked him during a secure communication. "More than ready, sir. We've been preparing for this fight for 2 years. The aliens have no idea what human military technology can really do." The final pieces were falling into place. Every human in the galaxy knew their role. Every ship had its destination. Every colony had its departure schedule. The aliens thought they were watching a conquered species slowly accepting their fate. Instead, they were watching the final preparations. For the greatest breakout in galactic history, Commander Sun-Mi Choi prepared the demolition charges that would destroy every piece of human infrastructure the moment the Exodus began. Nothing would be left behind for the aliens to study or use. But more than that, the destruction would serve as a message. Humans were not fleeing in defeat. They were leaving because they chose to leave. As the second anniversary of the quarantine approached, the galaxy remained completely unaware of what was coming. The alien monitoring stations reported the same boring routine every day. Human ships conducting normal business within their assigned prison. No attempts to escape. No signs of rebellion. But in the hidden construction yards and secret bases throughout the Sol system, humanity was putting the finishing touches on the most ambitious plan any species had ever attempted. They were not just planning to escape their cage. They were planning to claim the entire galaxy as their new home. The countdown had begun. Soon, the galaxy would learn what happened when you tried to contain a species that had spent its entire history exploring new worlds and conquering impossible challenges. The aliens thought they had caged humanity. Instead, they had given humanity 2 years to prepare for war. The morning that humanity disappeared from the Sol system started like any other day for the alien monitoring stations. Lieutenant Vex Tar of the Thraxian Navy reviewed the overnight reports from his position on the quarantine enforcement vessel, Silent Guardian. Human ship movements were normal. Energy readings from Earth and Mars showed typical activity levels. Everything appeared exactly as it had for the past 2 years. Another boring day watching the humans stay in their cage, Vex Tar muttered to his colleague. He had been stationed here for 18 months and was looking forward to his transfer next week. Watching defeated humans was not the glorious duty he had imagined when he joined the Navy. 50 million kilometers away, Admiral Dong Hyun Ryu stood on the bridge of New Horizon, the flagship of humanity's Exodus fleet. Behind him, through the massive windows that formed the front of the ship's command center, stretched the largest fleet ever assembled by any species in galactic history. 12,000 vessels of every size and purpose filled the space around him. Generation ships the size of small cities, military escorts bristling with weapons, science vessels packed with the most advanced equipment humanity had ever built. Supply ships carrying everything needed to establish new civilizations on distant worlds. "All fleets report ready, Admiral," said his communications officer. Dong Hyun nodded. This was the moment humanity had been preparing for since the day the Galactic Council pronounced their judgment. "Signal all ships. Operation Exodus begins now." The first sign that something was wrong came when Navigation Officer Yoonji Bae's carefully planned sequence began. All across the Sol system, human ships that had been conducting routine operations suddenly changed course. Mining vessels in the asteroid belt stopped their work and began moving toward rendezvous points. Colony ships around Mars started their engines and left orbit. Even the small pleasure craft that wealthy humans used for recreation began heading for the outer system. "Sir, we're detecting unusual movement patterns," reported a sensor operator on Silent Guardian. "Multiple human vessels are converging on coordinates beyond Pluto." Vex Tar frowned and looked at his screens. "Probably just a training exercise. The humans do those sometimes to keep their crews busy. But this was no training exercise. Beyond the orbit of Pluto, where the alien sensors could barely reach, the greatest military formation in human history was taking shape. Captain Min Ho, Yang's escort squadrons moved into protective positions around the civilian vessels. His ships looked nothing like the trade vessels and exploration craft the aliens had been watching for 30 years. These were pure warships, built in secret during the quarantine years, armed with weapons that pushed the boundaries of known physics. "Escort Squadron Alpha in position," Yang reported. "All weapon systems green, stealth fields active." The alien monitoring stations could detect that something was happening, but their sensors could not penetrate the interference created by humanity's new stealth technology. What looked like empty space to alien eyes was actually filled with hundreds of combat vessels. At New Horizon was not just the fleet's flagship, it was a mobile city. Inside its hull, 2 million humans lived in apartments and houses that looked exactly like those they had left behind on Earth. Parks and gardens provided green spaces where children could play. Schools and universities continued the work of education. Factories and laboratories ensured that human civilization would continue to advance even during the long journey to new worlds. "Final passenger count?" Dong-hyun asked. 47 million humans are aboard the Exodus fleet, replied his logistics officer. Every human in the galaxy except for the skeleton crews maintaining our monitoring stations. The alien blockade fleet was positioned along what they thought were the most likely escape routes from the Sol system. 300 ships from a dozen different species waited in formation, ready to intercept any human vessel that tried to break quarantine. They were confident in their overwhelming numerical superiority. After all, humans only had about 200 ships, and most of those were just civilian craft. Commander Zal Keth of the Krellian Imperial Navy commanded the largest blockade squadron. His 30 ships were positioned along the route toward Proxima Centauri, which intelligence said was humanity's most likely destination if they tried to escape. "All stations remain alert," he ordered his fleet. "The humans may be desperate enough to try something foolish." What Zalketh did not know was that humanity had no intention of going to Proxima Centauri. That system had been under alien observation for decades. Instead, Yunji Bei had plotted courses that would take the three main fleets to regions of space that the aliens had never bothered to explore. "Jump coordinates locked in," she reported. "Fleet Alpha will emerge in the Kepler sector 800 light-years beyond the galactic rim. Fleet Beta will jump to the Cygnus region, where we can make contact with the independent worlds. Fleet Gamma will head for the far side of the galaxy, beyond the reach of any alien pursuit." The moment of departure arrived with a flash of light that could be seen across the entire Sol system. Humanity's new faster-than-light drives did not work like alien technology. Instead of the slow, predictable acceleration that alien ships used, human vessels simply vanished from normal space and reappeared at their destination. The energy signature was completely different from anything the galaxy had ever seen. "What was that?" Vextar demanded as his sensors screamed warnings. "Where did all those ships come from?" The answer was simple but terrifying. The ships had not come from anywhere. They had been hiding in the Sol system all along, invisible to alien sensors, waiting for this moment. Now, as the stealth fields dropped, the alien monitoring stations could see the true size of humanity's fleet for the first time. "Emergency signal to all blockade units," Vextar shouted. "We have 12,000 human vessels attempting to break. Quarantine! Repeat! 12,000 vessels!" But it was already too late. The human fleet was not trying to sneak past the blockade. They were not even heading toward the blockade positions. Instead, they were jumping directly to their destinations, bypassing the alien forces entirely. Zalketh watched in disbelief as hundreds of human ships appeared on his sensors, jumped to hyperspace, and vanished again before his weapons could even target them. "All ships pursue immediately. Do not let them escape." His squadron began moving toward the human jump coordinates, but they were chasing ghosts. By the time the alien ships reached the position where the humans had been, there was nothing left but empty space and the fading energy signatures of the most advanced faster-than-light drives ever built. Captain So-Young Kang commanded the final phase of the evacuation. Her ships swept through the Sol system, collecting the last human personnel from monitoring stations and research outposts. Every piece of valuable equipment was loaded aboard her vessels. Every database was copied and transmitted to the fleet. Nothing of value would be left behind for the aliens to examine. "Luna Base is evacuated," reported one of her captains. "All personnel and equipment safely aboard." "Good. Begin demolition sequence." Throughout the Sol system, Charges that had been carefully placed over the past 2 years began to explode. Not random destruction, but precisely planned demolition that would deny the aliens any chance to study human technology. The great shipyards around Ceres vanished in brilliant flashes of light. Research stations that had developed humanity's greatest achievements were reduced to atoms. Even the orbital habitats around Earth were destroyed rather than left for alien occupation. But the most shocking moment came when technical specialist Woo-Jin Kim activated the automated defense systems that humanity had left behind. Weapon. Platforms that had been disguised as space debris suddenly came online, their targeting systems locking onto the approaching alien blockade ships. "This is your only warning," the platforms broadcast on all frequencies. "You are entering territory claimed by the human species. Withdraw immediately or face the consequences." The aliens had never heard anything like it. The audacity was breathtaking. Humanity was not just escaping, they were claiming the Sol system as their own property and daring anyone to challenge them. Zalketh made the mistake of testing the human resolve. His ships opened fire on the nearest defense platform, expecting to easily destroy what looked like a simple automated system. Instead, the platform's shields absorbed the alien weapon's fire without any apparent damage, and then returned fire with energy beams that sliced through Krellian armor like it was made of paper. 3 alien ships were destroyed in the first exchange. The rest retreated hastily, sending panicked reports back to their home governments. By the end of that day, the Sol system was empty of human life, but far from defenseless. The automated platforms continued their patrols, broadcasting the same message to any ship that approached. "Former territory of humanity. Contents claimed by absent owners. Trespassers will be destroyed." The galaxy reacted with shock and panic. How had humanity hidden such a massive fleet? Where had they gotten the technology to build ships that could outrun and outfight the best alien vessels? And most importantly, where had they gone? The answer to that last question would not become clear for months. The 3 human fleets had scattered across the galaxy like seeds on the wind, each heading for regions that the aliens had never fully explored. Fleet Alpha jumped toward the outer rim, where thousands of habitable worlds waited to be claimed. Fleet Beta headed for the independent systems that had never joined the Galactic Council. Fleet Gamma made the longest jump of all, aiming for the far side of the galaxy where they would be completely beyond alien reach. But humanity had not simply fled. Commander Sunmi Choi's demolition teams had destroyed more than just human installations. They had also targeted the navigation beacons and communication relays that the aliens used to track ships across interstellar space. Without these markers, the alien fleets found themselves unable to follow the human escape routes. "We've lost them completely," Zalketh reported to his superiors. "Their ships use some kind of drive system we've never seen before. They can jump farther and faster than anything in our fleet, and they've destroyed all the navigation aids we would need to track them." The Galactic Council emergency session that followed was unlike anything in the organization's 10,000-year history. Representatives who had been so confident about containing humanity now faced the terrifying reality that they had not contained anything. Instead, they had provoked the most rapid and complete military mobilization any species had ever achieved. "How many ships did they really have?" demanded the council speaker. "Intelligence estimates range from 10 to 15,000 vessels," replied the Thraxian admiral in charge of the blockade. "We detected energy signatures from drive systems at least 50 years ahead of anything we use. Their weapons technology appears to be equally advanced." The galaxy that had dismissed humanity as a minor threat now realized they were facing something entirely new, a species that had used their quarantine time not to accept defeat, but to prepare for the greatest expansion in galactic history. The aliens had tried to cage humanity and found instead that they had freed the most dangerous predator the galaxy had ever seen. Somewhere in the vast darkness between stars, 47 million humans were beginning the next phase of their journey. They carried with them not just the knowledge and determination to build new worlds, but also the memory of their banishment and the desire to ensure that no alien species would ever threaten humanity again. 3 years after the Great Exodus, Colonial Administrator Hai Li stood on the observation deck of Haven Station, watching the sunrise over New Seoul. The city spread across 3 continents of the world below, its gleaming towers reaching toward twin suns that painted the sky in shades of gold and orange. Ships moved constantly between the planet's surface and the orbital stations, carrying people and goods in an endless stream of activity. This world had not even appeared on galactic survey maps 3 years ago. The aliens had marked it as unsuitable for colonization because of its unusual twin-star system and slightly higher gravity. Now it was home to 12 million humans and growing larger every day. "Population report," Hyawan said to her assistant. 15 million humans across 47 worlds in this sector alone, came the reply. Agricultural output is exceeding all projections. Industrial capacity is at 130% of Earth standards. Haiwan smiled. The galaxy had expected humanity to struggle and slowly die in exile. Instead, humans were thriving beyond anyone's wildest dreams. The freedom from alien regulations and restrictions had unleashed human creativity in ways that even humanity had not expected. Dr. Ji-won Seo walked through the terraforming facility on New Busan, checking the atmospheric processors that were turning a barren world into a garden paradise. What would have taken alien technology centuries to accomplish, human science was doing in months. The secret was not just better machines, but a completely different approach to planetary engineering. Atmospheric composition is now Earth normal across 60% of the planet, reported her chief engineer. The new biological processors are working faster than we hoped. Instead of simply pumping chemicals into the air like alien terraforming, systems human technology used specially designed organisms that could transform entire atmospheres in record time. These creatures had been created using genetic techniques that the galaxy considered too dangerous to use. But without alien restrictions, human scientists were free to push the boundaries of what was possible. The transformation was not just happening on one world. Across the galaxy, in 3 separate arms, human colonies were spreading faster than any species in galactic history had ever expanded. Worlds that the aliens had dismissed as worthless were becoming centers of human civilization. Agent Tae-ho Park crouched in the shadows outside a Zephyrian intelligence facility, using equipment that would have been impossible to build under galactic law. His stealth suit made him completely invisible to alien sensors, while his brain implant allowed him to process information at superhuman speeds. He was no longer quite human, but he was more capable than any alien agent could imagine. The intelligence he had gathered over the past 6 months painted a picture that terrified the galactic powers. Humanity was not just surviving in exile, they were becoming something beyond anything the galaxy had ever seen. "Base, this is Shadow 7, he whispered into his communicator. "I have confirmation. The Zephyrians are mobilizing their entire fleet. They know about the colonies in the Vega sector." The response came immediately. "Understood. Continue monitoring. Phoenix Command wants to know their exact departure time." Tae-ho smiled grimly. The aliens still thought they were dealing. with the same humanity they had banished 3 years ago. They had no idea what humans had become in that time. Fleet Admiral Sang-Ho Kim stood in the command center of Eternal Vigilance, humanity's newest class of warship. The vessel was larger than most alien space stations and carried enough firepower to destroy entire fleets. But size was not its most impressive feature. The ship could phase in and out of normal space, becoming completely undetectable when it chose to be invisible. "Status report on the defense grid," he said to his officers. "All 47 colonial worlds are protected by orbital weapon platforms," replied his tactical officer. "Each platform is capable of destroying any known class of alien warship. The aliens would need to bring their entire combined fleet to threaten even one of our worlds." But Sang-Ho knew that humanity's greatest strength was not their weapons. It was their ability to make allies out of species that the galaxy had ignored for thousands of years. Ambassador Young-Sik Roh sat across from the representative of the Kepler Commonwealth, a group of 12 species that had been denied membership in the Galactic Council for being too primitive. The alien diplomat was staring in amazement at the data pad that showed human technological capabilities. "You would share all of this with us?" the alien asked. "Advanced spacecraft, terraforming, technology, weapons that could defend our worlds from any threat? In exchange for friendship and cooperation," Young-Sik replied. "The galaxy ignored you because you were weak. We offer you the chance to become strong." This conversation was happening on hundreds of worlds across the galaxy. Species that had been dismissed as unimportant by the major galactic powers suddenly found themselves with access to technology that made them equals of their former oppressors. The careful balance of power that had kept the galaxy stable for millennia was crumbling as humanity's new allies grew stronger every day. The Rigelian Empire was the first to realize the scope of the threat. Their intelligence services reported that 37 minor species had suddenly acquired advanced military technology from unknown sources. Worlds that had been defenseless were now protected by weapon systems that could destroy Rigelian battle cruisers. "It has to be the humans," Emperor Nal Thresh told his war council. "Somehow they survived their exile and are building an alliance against us." "Impossible," replied his chief admiral. "We destroyed their ability to travel between stars. They are trapped in the Sol system." The Emperor activated a holographic display showing the latest intelligence reports. Then explained this: human technology signatures detected in 17 different star systems. Species that could barely achieve interplanetary flight 6 months ago are now launching starships with capabilities superior to our own. The truth was even worse than the Emperor suspected. Humanity had not just survived their exile. They had used it as an opportunity to completely reinvent themselves. Free from the restrictions of galactic law, human scientists had pushed their technology centuries beyond what the galaxy considered possible. Commander Sujin Quan piloted her reconnaissance ship through the Andorian Nebula, using navigation systems that could plot courses through areas of space that aliens considered impossible to traverse. Her mission was to map every hidden world and secret facility that the galactic powers thought were beyond discovery. "Another weapons depot," she reported as her sensors detected a hidden Thraxian military base. "Coordinates transmitted to Fleet Command." The galaxy's greatest advantage had always been the vast distances between stars. Even with faster-than-light travel, it took weeks or months to move fleets from one system to another. This gave established powers time to respond to threats and maintain control over their territories. But human ships could now cross the galaxy in days rather than months. Their new drive systems allowed them to appear anywhere without warning, gather intelligence, and disappear before alien forces could respond. The galaxy's military leaders were discovering that all their careful strategic planning was useless against an enemy that could strike anywhere at any time. Dr. Kyung-Hoon Bae worked in a laboratory that existed in a dimension parallel to normal, space, accessible only through human dimensional technology. Here, freed from the physical laws that limited alien science, human researchers were developing capabilities that bordered on magic. The Biological Enhancement Project is ready for field testing, he reported to his supervisors through a quantum communication link. We can now modify human DNA to adapt to any environment within hours rather than generations. This was the ultimate expression of human adaptability. While aliens needed special equipment to survive in different environments, humans were modifying themselves to thrive anywhere in the galaxy. Some humans could now breathe methane atmospheres. Others could survive in the vacuum of space without protection. A few could even phase through solid matter like ghosts. The galaxy was beginning to realize that they were no longer dealing with the humanity they remembered. These were humans who had been pushed beyond their limits and had responded by transcending every limitation that biology and physics had ever imposed on them. Captain Myung-Soo Park commanded a scout fleet that was making contact with species so far from galactic civilization that most aliens did not even know they existed. His ships carried not weapons but gifts, technology that could solve problems these species had struggled with for centuries. The Helix Confederation is interested in joining our alliance, he reported. They have 50 inhabited worlds and industrial capacity that rivals most galactic powers. They've been ignored by the Council because they're too far from the core. Worlds. This was humanity's master strategy. While the established galactic powers fought among themselves and worried about maintaining their positions, humans were building a completely new power structure based on cooperation rather than domination. Species that had been ignored for millennia were becoming the foundation of a new galactic order. The Galactic Council's emergency sessions were becoming more frequent and more desperate. Representatives who had once been confident in their superiority now spoke in hushed, worried tones about reports from their intelligence services. Confirmed human presence in over 200 star systems, reported the Krellian ambassador. They're not just building colonies, they're establishing a parallel civilization that operates by completely different rules. How is this possible? Demanded the council speaker. We contained them to their home system. Our blockade fleet confirmed that no ships escaped. The Thraxian representative activated a holographic display showing the latest military analysis. Our experts believe they developed some form of undetectable faster-than-light travel years before their exile. They used the quarantine period to prepare for a mass evacuation that we never saw coming. But even this explanation did not capture the full scope of what humanity had achieved. The species that had been banished for being too dangerous had used their exile to become something beyond dangerous. They had become inevitable. In the depths of space, human fleets continued their expansion into regions that aliens had never explored. Each new world they claimed, each new species they befriended, each new technology they developed made humanity stronger and the old galactic order weaker. The galaxy had tried to cage humanity and instead had set them free to become the dominant force in the universe. The only question now was whether the established powers would surrender peacefully or force humanity to take by conquest what they could have shared through cooperation. The age of alien dominance was ending. The age of humanity was just beginning. The first Thraxian colony to disappear was Velcara Prime, a mining world on the edge of Thraxian space. The planetary governor sent his routine morning report to the sector command as usual. 6 hours later, when the next scheduled communication time arrived, there was only silence. Admiral Zexcott of the Thraxian Imperial Fleet arrived 3 days later with a squadron of warships, expecting to find pirates or perhaps a reactor accident. What he found instead was something that would haunt his dreams for the rest of his life. The planet was empty. Not destroyed, not damaged, but completely empty. Every building stood exactly as it had been left. The power systems were still running. Food was still warm in some of the restaurants, but there was not a single living being anywhere on the planet. "Sir, we're detecting a transmission beacon in the capital city," reported his communications officer. The message was simple and chilling. Eviction notice. By order of the Human Colonial Authority, this world has been reclaimed for human settlement. The previous inhabitants have been relocated to a more suitable environment. You have 30 standard days to remove any remaining Thraxian presence from this sector. Relocated? Zexcott stared at the message in disbelief. What does that mean? The answer came from the planet's surface when his landing teams discovered transportation pads that showed signs of recent heavy use. Whoever had taken the colonists had done so carefully and completely, removing every person without harming the infrastructure. Colonel Kyung-Suk Ha watched the evacuation of Velcara Prime from the bridge of her stealth transport Silent Storm. The operation had taken exactly 18 hours to complete, using transportation technology that could move entire populations instantaneously across interstellar distances. All Thraxian civilians have been relocated to their core worlds, reported her operations officer. No casualties, no resistance. They never even knew what was happening until they woke up on different planets. Kyung-Suk nodded. This was the new human way of warfare. Instead of destroying their enemies, they simply removed them from the equation. The Thraxians would find their people safe and unharmed on worlds deep in Thraxian territory, but they would also find themselves suddenly missing an entire colony without a single shot being fired. Status on the next target? Thraxian mining station Gorvac 7 is ready for evacuation. Our teams are in position. Within a week, 6 more Thraxian outposts had simply vanished. Each time, the pattern was the same. The aliens would go to sleep as normal and wake up on a different world, with all their possessions and equipment left behind. The only sign of human involvement was the same message: evacuation notice, with 30 days to remove any remaining presence. Intelligence Director Chang Min-yu coordinated the psychological warfare campaign from his headquarters on New Terra. His teams had spent months studying alien psychology, learning exactly how to create maximum confusion and fear with minimum actual violence. "The Thraxians are starting to panic," reported his chief analyst. "They're pulling back from their frontier worlds and concentrating their forces around their core systems. The other species are watching to see what happens next." "Perfect," Chang Min smiled. "Now we move to Phase 2. Target the Krellian trade routes." The Krellian hegemony had been the most vocal supporter of humanity's banishment. They had provided the largest number of ships for the quarantine fleet and had celebrated loudly when humanity disappeared from galactic politics. Now they were about to learn what it meant to make humanity their enemy. Krellian merchant ships began disappearing from hyperspace, not destroyed, but simply gone. Their crews would be found days later on Krellian worlds, with no memory of how. They had gotten there and no idea what had happened to their ships. The vessels themselves were never seen again. Captain Velmars of the Krellian merchant vessel Profit Seeker was drinking his morning stimulant when his ship suddenly lurched out of hyperspace. Alarms screamed throughout the vessel as his crew tried to understand what had gone wrong. "Captain, we're detecting unknown vessels surrounding us," reported his sensor operator. "They just appeared out of nowhere. The ships that materialized around Profit Seeker looked like nothing in any alien database. They were sleek and black, with hull designs that seemed to bend light around them. No weapons were visible, but the Krellian crew could feel the power radiating from these mysterious vessels. Unknown Krellian vessel, prepare for boarding, came a voice over the communication system. You will not be harmed if you comply. Before Velmars could even respond, his crew began collapsing one by one, falling into a deep sleep as some kind of gas filled the ship's atmosphere. His last memory was of figures in strange armor walking through the walls of his ship as if they were made of air. He woke up 3 days later in a medical facility on the Krellian homeworld, with doctors telling him he had been found unconscious in a shuttle near the planet's orbital station. His ship and cargo were gone, and no one could explain how he had gotten there. The campaign of disappearances was having exactly the effect that Chang Min had planned. Alien governments were spending enormous resources trying to protect their shipping lanes and colonies, but they could not defend against an enemy they could not see or track. Grand Admiral Seokjin An received the battle plans for Operation Crimson Justice in his command bunker on New Terra. The Krellian hegemony had finally decided to respond to the mysterious attacks by mobilizing their grand fleet, 1,000 of their most powerful warships, commanded by their greatest military heroes. They're gathering at the Nexus Point, reported his intelligence officer. Admiral Thekvan is commanding personally. He's bringing everything they have. Seok Jin studied the tactical display. The Krellians were using classic alien military doctrine. Gather an overwhelming force and advance on the enemy's known positions. It was exactly what he had hoped they would do. Order the Second Fleet to the Crimson Nebula, he commanded. 200 ships should be more than enough. His officers looked at him in surprise. The Krellians outnumbered them 5-1. With ships that were individually larger and more heavily armed than anything the galaxy had seen before. But Seok Jin was not concerned about numbers or conventional firepower. The Battle of Crimson Nebula lasted exactly 6 hours and 14 minutes. When it was over, the mighty Krellian Grand Fleet no longer existed. 800 ships had been completely destroyed, with the remaining 200 fleeing in panic toward their home territory. Admiral Thekvan himself survived only because his flagship's crew surrendered before the humans could destroy it. He spent the rest of his life trying to explain to Krellian High Command what he had witnessed that day. Their ships moved like ghosts, he reported in his official statement. They would appear from nowhere, destroy one of our vessels, and vanish again before we could return fire. Our weapons passed through them as if they were not there. When we finally managed to hit one, our energy beams were somehow reflected back at us. But the most terrifying part of his report was what happened to the Krellian survivors. Instead of being taken prisoner or executed, they were simply transported to uninhabited worlds with enough supplies to start new colonies. The message that came with them was the same as always. You have 30 days to evacuate Krellian space. War Coordinator Mi-Young Kwok monitored the galactic response from her command center deep within an asteroid that existed in 7 dimensions. Simultaneously, her teams were orchestrating the complete collapse of the galactic order that had ruled for 10,000 years. The Rigelian Empire is recalling all their frontier fleets, reported one of her analysts. The Zephyrian Confederation is abandoning their outer colonies. Even the Andromedan Collective is pulling back to their core worlds. Phase 3 is ready to begin, announced another coordinator. We have teams in position to disrupt their communication networks. Within hours, the galaxy's entire information infrastructure began to collapse. Communication relays that had connected different species for millennia suddenly went offline. Trade networks that had operated for centuries found their data systems corrupted beyond repair. Even the most secure military channels were compromised by intrusion programs that seemed to anticipate every alien security measure. The psychological effect was devastating. Alien governments found themselves unable to coordinate their responses or even communicate reliably with their own forces. Ancient alliances began to crumble as species accused each other of sabotage and betrayal. Captain Junwoo Han led a strike, team that infiltrated the Central Banking Authority on Galactic Prime, the economic heart of alien civilization. Their mission was not to steal money or destroy records, but to do something far more damaging to galactic stability. Upload complete, reported his tech specialist. Every alien government's financial records are now public knowledge. Their citizens can see exactly how much their leaders have been stealing from them. The release of classified financial data had an immediate effect. Dozens of alien governments faced massive civil unrest as their populations learned about the corruption and waste that had been hidden for centuries. Military forces that should have been fighting humans instead. But humanity's most effective weapon was not military or technological. It was philosophical. Agent Do Hyun Shin worked undercover on alien worlds, spreading a simple but powerful message. All sentient beings deserved freedom and equality, regardless of their species' position in the galactic hierarchy. The slave species are beginning to revolt, he reported. The Altarians have declared independence from the Krellian hegemony. The Viridian workers have seized control of the mining operations. In the Tau sector, even some of the client species are demanding equal representation in galactic government. The galaxy that had once been unified in its fear of humanity was now fragmenting as long-suppressed grievances finally erupted into open conflict. Species that had been dominated for millennia suddenly saw an opportunity to claim their freedom. In the emergency session of the Galactic Council, the remaining representatives faced the terrifying reality of their situation. The carefully maintained balance of power that had kept them in control was crumbling, and they had no idea how to stop it. The humans have done more than escape their containment, admitted the council speaker. They have somehow turned our entire civilization against itself. Species that have been allies for thousands of years now view each other as enemies. Our own populations are rebelling against our authority. The Thraxian ambassador's scales had turned pale yellow with fear. They are not just waging war against our governments. They are waging war against the very concept of galactic hierarchy. They want to destroy everything our civilization has built. Then we must destroy them first, declared the Krellian representative. We still have enough combined forces to overwhelm them if we act together. But even as he spoke, reports were coming in of more alien worlds declaring independence, more fleets defecting to join the human alliance, and more government installations falling to mysterious attacks that left no trace of who was responsible. The galaxy had tried to contain humanity and instead had unleashed something that threatened to transform everything they had ever known. The age of alien supremacy was ending, and there seemed to be nothing they could do to stop it. 5 years after humanity's banishment, President Jun-Ho Nam walked through the corridors of what used to be the Galactic Council headquarters. The ancient building had been transformed from a symbol of alien power into something entirely different. Where once only the representatives of major alien empires had been allowed to walk, now beings from hundreds of different species moved freely through halls that belonged to everyone. The great assembly chamber had been rebuilt, instead of floating. Seats arranged to show which species were more important than others. There were simple chairs arranged in circles. No one sat higher than anyone else. No species had a bigger voice than any other. This was the new way of doing things in the galaxy. The human way. Jun-Ho stopped at a window that looked out over the city below. 5 years ago, this world had been the capital of an empire that ruled half the galaxy. Now it was the meeting place for a federation of free worlds that worked together by choice rather than force. The change had not been easy, but it had been complete. "Mr. President, they're ready for you," said his aide, a young woman whose grandparents had been born on Earth before humanity ever knew that aliens existed. The surrender ceremony was taking place in the main assembly hall. Representatives from every major alien government sat waiting to formally acknowledge what everyone already knew. Humanity had won the war that started when the galaxy tried to cage them. Supreme Commander Hae-Jin Lee stood at the center of the hall. Her simple uniform a stark contrast to the elaborate robes and decorations that the alien representatives wore. She had commanded the human forces that had swept across the galaxy, not conquering worlds, but liberating them from the empires that had ruled them for thousands of years. "You may begin," she said to the first delegate. The Krellian ambassador rose from his seat. His scales had turned the pale color that his species showed when they were completely defeated. 5 years ago, he had been one of the most powerful beings in the galaxy, speaking for an empire that controlled hundreds of worlds. Now he represented a government that no longer existed. "Supreme Commander Lee," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "The Krellian hegemony formally surrenders all territorial claims and acknowledges the authority of the Human Colonial Defense Force to maintain peace in this galaxy." It was a sentence that would have been impossible to imagine just 5 years earlier. The mighty Krellian Empire, which had lasted for 8,000 years, was formally admitting defeat to a species they had tried to banish from civilized space. But Hae-Jin Lee's response surprised everyone in the hall. "The Human Colonial Defense Force does not claim authority over any species or territory. We simply guarantee that no species will ever again have the power to banish, enslave, or dominate any other species." She activated a holographic display that showed the current state of the galaxy. Where once there had been vast empires colored in different shades to show who controlled what territory, now there was a complex pattern of independent worlds and voluntary federations. The Krellian worlds are now governed by democratically elected representatives chosen by the people who live there, she explained. The species that your empire once ruled as slaves are now free and independent. Some have chosen to work with you as equals. Others have chosen to have nothing to do with you. That is their right. Justice Minister Bo-Ra Shin stepped forward to address the Thraxian delegation. The Thraxians had provided the largest number of ships for the fleet that was supposed to keep humanity contained in the Sol system. Their military leaders had boasted that they would destroy any human ship that tried to escape. "Admiral Zexcott," she said to the Thraxian fleet commander, "your forces killed 300 human civilians in the attack on mining station Beta 7. Under the old galactic law, this would be considered a minor incident. Under human law, it is mass murder. The alien military leader's skin changed to the dark green color that Thraxians displayed when they were terrified. He had been expecting this moment for months, ever since his government fell and human forces took control of Thraxian space. However, Borah continued, the families of those who died have voted on your punishment. They have chosen rehabilitation rather than execution. You will spend the next 20 years working to rebuild the communities that were damaged by your actions. You will live among the people you harmed and learn to see them as equals rather than enemies. This was the human way of justice, not revenge, but education, not destruction, but transformation. It was completely alien to the species that had ruled the galaxy through fear and violence for so long. One by one, the representatives of the fallen empires made their formal surrenders. The Rigelian Emperor, whose 1,000-ship fleet had been destroyed in 6 hours at the Battle of Crimson Nebula. The Zephyrian Confederation leaders, whose intelligence networks had been completely compromised by human agents. The Andromedan collective governors, whose worlds had been liberated by their own populations using human-supplied technology. Each surrender was the same. The alien governments admitted defeat and dissolved themselves. Their territories became independent worlds governed by their own people. Their military forces were disbanded or integrated into local defense units. Their ruling classes became ordinary citizens with no special privileges. But the most important moment came when the council speaker, the ancient being who had pronounced humanity's banishment 5 years ago, floated to the center of the hall. "I do not understand," the jellyfish-like creature said, its voice filled with confusion. "You have defeated us completely. You could rule the galaxy as we did. Why do you give power to species that are weaker than you?" President Junho Nam answered the question. "Because we learned something during our exile that you never understood. True strength comes not from the power to control others, but from the wisdom to help others become strong themselves." The holographic display changed to show human colonies across the galaxy. But these were not the conquered territories of a human empire. They were cooperative settlements where humans lived alongside dozens of other species, sharing technology and knowledge freely. "Look at what we have built," Junho continued. "Worlds where any being can live freely regardless of what species they belong to. Research stations where the best minds from 100 different races work together on projects that benefit everyone. Trade networks where wealth flows to whoever provides the best goods and services, not to whoever has the biggest." Military. Cultural architect Jae-Yun Park activated another display showing the social changes that had swept across the galaxy. Species that had been enemies for millennia were now working together. Technologies that the old empires had kept secret were being shared freely. Art, music, and literature from thousands of different cultures were spreading to every world. This is what the galaxy becomes when no one species has the power to dominate all the others, she explained. This is what you could have had if you had welcomed humanity as equals instead of trying to cage us. The alien representatives looked around the hall with growing understanding. The humans had not conquered the galaxy, they had freed it. Every species, including humanity itself, was now stronger and more prosperous than they had ever been under the old system of empires and hierarchies. Admiral Han-Sol Kim, the human officer who had stood trial 5 years ago, entered the hall carrying a simple metal box. Inside were the original documents from humanity's trial, The charges, the evidence, the final judgment that had banished his species from galactic civilization. "Do you remember this?" he asked the council speaker. "The judgment against humanity," the ancient being replied. "We found your species too dangerous for civilized space." Han Sol opened the box and removed the documents. "You were right. We were dangerous. We were dangerous to a system that kept some species as rulers and others as slaves. We were dangerous to empires built on the suffering of the weak. We were dangerous to anyone who believed that some beings deserved freedom while others did not." He walked to a ceremonial fire that burned at the center of the hall and dropped the documents into the flames. "The galaxy that pronounced this judgment no longer exists. The species that wrote these words have learned to live as equals with those they once oppressed. The empires that enforced this decision have been replaced by federations of free worlds." The papers burned. Representatives from the liberated species began to speak. The former slave races of the Krellian Empire thanked humanity for giving them the tools to claim their freedom. The client species of the Rigelian Empire described how human technology had allowed them to become independent for the first time in their history. Even some of the former ruling species admitted that life was better now that they no longer had to spend their resources maintaining control over unwilling subjects. Supreme Commander Hai-Jin Lee made the final announcement of the ceremony. "The Human Colonial Defense Force will maintain peacekeeping stations throughout the galaxy to ensure that no species ever again attempts to build an empire based on the domination of others. But our primary mission is not to rule or control. Our mission is to explore." She activated a final holographic display that showed the edge of the galaxy and the vast darkness beyond. "Our deep space reconnaissance fleets have detected signals from civilizations beyond the galactic rim. Ancient species that have developed in isolation for millions of years. Technologies and philosophies that we cannot even imagine. The alien." Representatives realized with a mixture of fear and excitement that humanity's conquest of their galaxy was not the end of human expansion. It was just the beginning. "Any species that wishes to join us in exploring beyond the known galaxy is welcome," Hai-Jin continued. "Together, we will discover what lies in the darkness between galaxies. Together, we will make contact with civilizations that may be older and wiser than any of us. Together, we will continue to grow and learn and become more than we ever thought possible." As the ceremony ended and the representatives began to leave, Admiral Han Sol Kim stood alone in the Great Hall. On the wall behind him, workers were installing a new monument, a simple plaque with words written in every language spoken in the galaxy. "To the Galactic Council that thought to cage us, thank you for setting us free. You taught us that the only chains that truly bind are the ones we accept." Above the monument, through the great windows of the hall, ships could be seen preparing for departure. Human vessels and alien ships working together, carrying mixed crews toward the edge of known space. They were heading for the galactic rim and the unknown civilizations that waited beyond. The galaxy that had banished humanity 5 years ago was now under human protection. But it was a protection based on freedom rather than control, on cooperation rather than domination. The age of empires was over. The age of exploration was just beginning, and somewhere in the darkness beyond the galactic rim, ancient civilizations waited, unaware that they were about to encounter a species that had been forged in the fires of exile and emerged as the greatest force for freedom the universe had ever seen.